Hey, everybody, Guy Magno here from Chit Chat, the podcast. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. We're so thankful that all of you are engaging in the way that you are and that you're listening, that you've kind of folded us into your routine listening. We just really, really appreciate that a lot. I just got done recording this podcast with Ben Sanders. I didn't know Ben basically at all. He and I met at Chamber once or twice. Ben started a really neat furniture company here in St. Cloud called Dream Home. They're on Division. And just hearing his story of working hard and starting a business and trying to make something unique and special while taking care of the client in a really special way, it was a really fun conversation. You know, as a guy that has started a business or two, there's just something really fun just about hearing origin stories of people who have done it too, and they've worked hard and they've overcome adversity. And so it was a really fun conversation, and I'm excited for you to hear it now. Ben, Thank you so much for coming and joining us on the podcast.
Yeah.
Appreciate having you here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So I don't know Ben well. I mean, at all. We've had just a couple of conversations. I met Ben through the Chamber of Commerce. Ben hosted maybe in the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, about.
Their business hosted, and it was, I think, best chamber hosting I've seen in a really, really long time.
Oh, I appreciate
You guys presented well. There was humility and self-deprecation and confidence all at the same time, which is a fun combo. And I didn't think I would care about a furniture company, selling furniture. I did.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't go into it with any sort of
grandiose expectations.
I didn't know anything about it, I went in like neutral, and I came out a fan, and so I was like, hey, you'd be a fun guy to have on the podcast.
Well,
so
I appreciate that, and one of my just kind of an ethos of mine in life is that knowledge creates appreciation, and it's like the more that you're able to learn about something, it's like, okay, for example, like the St. Louis Bridge. It's like, it doesn't seem like it's something that's super interesting, but then when you find out, well, that's the first bridge ever to be used to like mass produce steel that allowed that tensile strength to be able to get people to cross the St. Louis River, Mississippi River. I'm not exactly sure, but and then it's like, oh man, like you learn that and you're like, you think about what it takes to create those steel beams and ultimately kind of pushed the, America forward throughout like the late 1800s into the early 1900s and Carnegie and the whole dynasties of whatever. Point being is, it's just like, I think this is what I think is so cool about doing a podcast like this with you guys. It's like, there are so many cool stories just in our community, and just being able to highlight that, it just like gives everybody who does come in contact with it the ability to, well, there is something more. Maybe it's not just a furniture store, and one of the things that I talked about in that presentation was that people buy from people. Yeah. And I think that's sort of the whole idea is once somebody gets to know you, because that's all a business is just a collection of people. Yeah. And once you can kind of break that down, and if you can break that fourth wall, so to speak, and not just look at it from the, well, I'm the customer, I'm buying, yada, yada, yada. It's a lot more fun for you. And ultimately that's what I think makes a community. A community is just a collection of people who are interacting on a daily basis. And the more we get to know each other, the more we get to learn about each other, the more we appreciate each other. And that's been just such a genuine blessing about joining the Chamber of Commerce, is for that exact reason. Like there's so many things that I go into and I'm like, I don't want to go, or I'm not thinking that what am I going to learn at this? And it's just like every week I'm like pumped about it. So yeah, I really appreciate the kind words, and it's something that I think that we align pretty.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I think in business, it's a mistake that people make, that you think that people are interested in your product because they buy your product.
Correct.
Right? But the problem is if your product is the only thing that you are selling, it means that the person that comes and provides a similar product for a penny less, you'll lose. You will lose that sale 100% of the time, because the only thing that you think is valuable is this product.
Absolutely.
And so if I can get the same product, and the vast majority of consumers don't know or understand the differences or nuances of how your product might even be different. So like that couch is the same, or that website is the same, or whatever. But if it's a penny less,
correct,
and you've only sold it as a commodity, you'll lose every time. But if it's about people buy from people, and the experience of coming in
Yeah.
and going to just buy a couch,
For
but
sure.
then actually being like cared for by a really, really nice staff that is trying to pursue, you know, selling furniture in a way that humanizes someone. Like
Yeah,
that is an invaluable thing. And, you know, we're trying to do similar kinds of things. So
for sure.
it's fun to hear you talk about that. Maybe before we kind of jump in,
Yeah.
tell us where do you work? What you know,
Yeah.
tell us about your business, and just give me a little like flyover of maybe your history of how you ended up here with a furniture business in
Yeah.
Central Minnesota.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and you guys, you'll have to forgive me. I tend to go off on tangents on
Dude,
occasion.
you're good.
So
It's a podcast. I think
yeah,
it's-
that's kind
I
of the
think
point.
it's kind of what you're supposed to
Yeah.
do a little bit.
But yeah, so my name is Ben Sanders. I'm the owner of Dream Home Furniture. I was born and raised in Marshall, Minnesota.
Mhm.
It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours southwest of here, but small town. Very, very proud to be from Marshall, Minnesota, and was raised by just the best parents in the world. And my grandfather started a small business down in Marshall back in like the 60s or 70s. It was like a material wholesaling business. So kind of like Mannion's, if you've seen
Sure.
any of those trucks, they distribute to local lumber yards and
Yeah.
whatnot. And then my dad took it over. And then I went to St. John's, graduated with a global business degree. Basketball was always a big part of my life and through high school. And then I played a little bit in college. I went to a school down in Arizona for a little while called Grand Canyon University. Played basketball there.
Go Antelopes?
Yep, lopes up. That's
all
right.
right,
Yeah,
all
you
right.
got it. You got it. So that was a fun part of my life, and I was really interested in coaching. That's kind of what I wanted to do. Is
Yeah.
I wanted to be a basketball coach. So then my first job out of college was at the University of Wisconsin Stout as a graduate assistant basketball coach. I think it was like my stipend every month was like $1,400 or something. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was it did not pay very well, but I just loved it, and it didn't really feel like a job. Always kind of had this itch to do my own thing, but you know, even in college, I'd talk about gas stations, or you know, it didn't really matter what it was. It's just
As long as you could do it.
as long as you could do it. And again, the way I thought about it, well, it doesn't matter if you're selling furniture or coffee or gas or whatever. It's like the reason that people go to Quick Trip so much isn't because they have the best gas. It's kind of like what you're talking about. It sounds so lame, but like we'll see you next time, or just all of those little things.
Human.
It's always
a human convenience store experience.
Absolutely. And so that was always just kind of in the ethos of what I wanted to do or why I did what I did. And so how I got into furniture was we were on 9-month contracts. So after my first year of coaching at Stout, I had a 3-month summer window. And I was like, well, I could either go back home to Marshall, live with my parents, and then work for them in the lumber yard, or try to find a job in the cities where all my buddies from college were living now and everyone was working and had jobs. And so that's what I ultimately ended up deciding to do. So then I had to find a job. So I did what anyone does when they need something. They figure out, a life-altering decision is you go to Craigslist, and I found this ad looking for a furniture salesperson. And I was like, sweet. Yeah, sounds good. So I go in to interview, and I roll up, there's no sign on, it's a massive, like 32,000 square foot building. It's right in Arbor Lakes. Do you know where in Maple Grove?
Yeah.
So it's actually the Burlington building now.
Okay.
So it was that building. It was the old Sports Authority connected to Joann's, if anyone's familiar with it. But yeah, huge space. There was no sign. There was just a stack of mattresses sitting on the curb outside. And I'm like, what is this? Like, is this the right place? And I walk in, and there's this guy who I was kind of working with or talking to. And he's like, are you Ben? I'm like, yeah, I'm Ben. And like, we sit down, and I pull out my resume, and I've got,
He doesn't need that.
He
does not need that.
I didn't know at the time.
He's got mattresses on the curb.
Exactly.
He does not need your resume.
Yeah. He's like, and then he goes on to explain to me, it's like, okay, so this is what we do is we open these stores, like we do pop-up stores. So this store is going to be here for 90 days. And I'm like, well, I need a job for 90 days. I'm like, this is perfect. I can sell I can sell furniture and mattresses. I worked in sales my whole life. Another thing, while I was at St. John's, I cold called for the Minnesota Twins. So I was trying to sell season tickets, and that year we started 3-30 or something, and I had to try to call like random Twins fans to talk them into it. So sales was always, I knew that was going to be my path, was going to be selling something. I didn't know what, and I didn't really care what, as long as I believed in it.
Yeah.
I was like, I feel confident and be able to build relationships and sell it. So I go in, I meet with him, I sit down, I have my resume. He's like, you went to college, you have a resume, do you want to be the manager? And I was like, do I get paid more? And he goes, kinda. It's like an extra $2 an hour. I was making it was like $14 an hour, and I got like a 2% commission on everything I sold. But I got to check in all the trucks, and I got to kind of see all the books behind everything and see how this works, which is absolutely pretty cool. So then, there's quite a bit of downtime in a furniture store. So you're just kind of sitting there from time to time, and like, you don't have, it's just not hustling and bustling. It's not like it's a grocery store where there's constantly people and stuff. So it's like, you do have some downtime. So we just sit there and just think, and just like, what would my furniture store be like? And so then I started to figure out what everybody made. I figured out, okay, so like, why, I'd talk to, his name was Ron. I'd ask him, I'd be like, so why do you guys do this short-term lease thing? He's like, well, there's these big empty spaces that are just sitting here. Landlords need to fill them, or a lot of times they have co-tenancy clauses. So then they get a discount, like, from Joann's, Joann's would get a discounted rate if they don't have a neighbor, because they want co-tenants to bring traffic over and vice versa. So it kind of worked symbiotically. So anyway, so then he started to explain to me, so we get a huge discount on the rent, but we have a clause where they can terminate our lease if they were able to sign a long-term deal. So let's say at a spot like that, a long-term lease, they'd want like $90,000 a month or something crazy, which is, I know it sounds, I'm like, how many basketballs does Sports Authority have to sell?
So many.
Maybe it's not 90,000, but I guarantee it's over 50,000. It's
every
a
month.
crazy
Every month.
number every month.
Wow.
And they were in there for like 10. So it's like, okay, well, now you start to look at it and well, how much furniture? You don't have to sell that much furniture. And like, I knew we weren't getting paid very well. And then they didn't spend any money on advertising, and they would just put the mattresses out on the curb. They put furniture outside, and they'd have signs, and you just do all the little gimmicks that you could. And then I just started to piece it together. I'm like, they made how much money doing this? And so then I was like, I can do this. And I liked it, and I enjoyed it. And then again, my parents are, we're kind of a small business family. And I was like, hey, Dad, like, I can do this. Like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to find a spot. I already had found the spot that I wanted to do. It was in Elk River. I could afford it. This is what it would cost. Like, I had the vendors. I had,
from relationships
that I did, like being the manager, like I saw all the emails, and what it was just writing stuff down and kind of learning on my own. So then I had to go to my dad, and he co-signed on a loan for me, basically saying, if I lost it, I'd have to move back and work for him to pay it off. And then starting off, I mean, it was just me and I think it was a one-man shop in Elk River. And as I kind of explained to Chamber, like, I'd pay my college buddies or somebody that didn't have a job at the time, I'd go buy him the buffet over at Pizza Ranch to help me unload the trucks and do all this. But so that's kind of how I got into it, which is sort of a long-winded answer, but that's really how it went. So do you want me to like go all the way to the timeline to today, or? Well, I want you to.
We'll kind of get there, but
for sure.
I think one of the things that was maybe the most interesting about hearing your story at when you guys hosted Chamber, I think was, you just alluded to it, but just like the scrappy ways that you like got your buddies and friends to participate. You had told a story about someone wanted delivery, but you didn't have a truck, or wanted a discount or something. And so you said, well, you have a truck. So if you help me move this thing, I'll give you X discount or whatever. And I just think it's hearing the stories of how people start. There are very few people. I think, maybe we could each think of one or two of just like some really fun startup. They got their venture capital backing came through and they were, living high on the hog right away. But the amount of people and the amount of businesses that's true of is rounding to the nearest zero.
Yeah, almost
it's none.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it is none. But these are the stories of even the most successful businesses of just they started in a garage and they did these kinds of crazy things to make it work. And that was so fun to hear. Like, oh yeah, this is bootstrappy, just like scrappy business of trying to figure it out. And I loved that,
For sure.
And of course, like, thinking back to sleeping on the floor in my studio while I'm editing until 2 a.m, there's just like a kindredness to, like, when you see someone who has done it and is doing it, there's something fun about that.
It's the good old days.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, I heard this quote one time and it was like, there's a universal currency and it's effort. And everyone respects effort. And if you put in the effort, people will respect it. And it's like, I'm not afraid to, because it's like, I didn't have a truck. I didn't have a trailer. I didn't have access to these things, but like what I did have was I will figure it out. And so I had this little store. It was like 8,000 square feet. And I would get a semi full of Wayfair returns that we got for like next to nothing. But I mean, you got random tabletops with no legs. You got a dresser without drawers. I mean, there's tons of junk in there and you had to weed through. So I would get just loads of, have loads of garbage, but I didn't have any way to get it to the dump. And so I had this gaudy Italian leather, like, sectional, and it looked like race car wheels, and like the footrest like folded back into the seat, and you'd fold it so like it'd be like a backrest into a foot. It was the weirdest thing. And it was this blue collar guy, and he comes in and he's like, how much for this one? It's like not even pieced together. And I'm like, I don't know, I'd have to piece it together and look it up. And I gave him a price, and then he's like, well, can you do any better? And then I was like, you got a trailer? And he's like, I do have a trailer. I'm like, okay, we'll tell you what, I'll give you a discount if you meet me back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow, because the store opens at 10. If you help me load all this, I took him into the back and showed him the junk from the truck. If you help me load this into the trailer and you drive it over to the dump and help me unload it,
I'll give you a discount.
I'll give you a discount. He's like, yeah, for sure. And he's like smoking a cigarette outside while I'm throwing the stuff at the dump. And so it was.
Those are fun origin stories.
Yeah.
Really, really cool.
And it is true. It's like, kind of what I was saying, like the good old days. You don't realize it, but yeah. And I still, guys at work give me crap all the time. Like, I would say thrifty. They may say cheap, but it's just like, we don't need the nicest stuff. Like, it's, do you know who Dick Enrico is?
No.
So Dick Enrico, he started Second Wind.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's was a very, very successful guy. And this was about 2 or 3 years. I think I was maybe 2 years into doing this thing. And then there was this spot kind of by Coon Rapids. And it was called Deals Mart. And Deals Mart was like looking to go out of business or looking to sell. And so I was like, ooh, that'd be a good spot. And then we could do like a liquidation sale for them and possibly turn it back into a furniture store. And I was like, that could be a good opportunity. And so Dick Enrico, he had this store called Second Wind that he sold for quite a bit of money, like to Johnson's Fitness. And then he also had like his Second Shade, where he did like used patio stuff. And then he was starting this new thing called the Shady Deal Depot, which is kind of doing what I was doing with the returns and cycling through them and then selling them. But it was more than furniture. It was like anything he could get, essentially. And I called him one time because I was trying to get the Deals Mart. Like, I liked the name. 2, they had a really nice sign that I wanted. And 3, I liked the location. So I was like, okay, well, if we could get this deal, then we could shut this store down or liquidate all their stuff and then turn it into a furniture. And so I would call it like Deals Mart Furniture. I was just swinging. And anyway, so Dick Enrico comes and he ended up making a deal with them first. And I was like, dang. So, but I still wanted the sign because he was going to make it the Shady Deal Depot. So I called him and I was like, hey, my name's Ben. Do you have this sign? Like, and would you sell me the naming rights to Deals Mart? And he's like, who is this? And I was like, oh, my name's Ben. I have a little furniture store, da. And he's like, what? He's like, no, it's not for sale. I might use it in the future, but you should come see me. You should come to my warehouse. He had like one of his little Shady Deal Depot places in the city somewhere. And so I go and I meet him at this warehouse, and I think he just kind of took a liking to me and was just like, what are you doing?
Game respect game.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
nah. When he's a lot.
Hustle though.
Yeah, like
That's it.
I think that's the effort.
This isn't a money thing.
Exactly.
This isn't a money thing. This is an old guy who has played the game for a long time.
Yeah.
Who sees a guy jump in and is like, I understand.
Trying.
I understand that thing.
And even just like, and if I were him, it's like the fact that he'd even pick up the phone and call about this sign. Yeah. Like, how did he figure out that I had the sign, you know, or whatever? But he told me this thing that I was like, and I think about it a lot. And what he said was, right now, your greatest asset is a lack of resources. Because as soon as you get resources, it's so easy to waste them.
And you stop creative problem solving.
And you stop creative problem solving, and you start trying to solve problems with money rather than the way you got to be successful was, you know, kind of the bootstrap, thrifty, figure it outness that leads to the ideas that you never would have been able to think of had you just been able to, and I can tell you this for a fact. Anytime I've tried to solve a problem with money, it never gets solved. I feel like that sometimes. Maybe it's just because I don't like doing it, but it does feel that way.
Cool. And so how did you end up on Division in your current spot?
So we had the store in Elk River.
Yeah.
And then after a year, I actually reopened back in that exact same spot that I worked at in Maple Grove. Okay. It was still vacant. And I was like, well, I know this spot
can do
works.
This.
Yeah. So then I talked to one of my good buddies, Trevor. He was one of my best friends from St. John's, and he was my roommate at the time.
Yep.
And he left his corporate tech sales job, and he joined. And so we were doing that. And then they sold the building, or Burlington assigned a long-term lease, so we got kicked out, so we had to liquidate out and whatever, and it was going super well. So then after that, we were like,
was that a bummer email to get?
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, because then we found out like that, you know, running liquidation sales is very profitable. Yeah. It's like, you know, you do the store closing sale, you have the wacky inflatable tube men, just the whole game.
All the kitschy stuff.
It works. Like,
sure.
It's so fun. And you just sell stuff like crazy, but it's a very chaotic 3 months. And it's like I always say, you know, people don't like moving out of a home or or from an apartment to a home or a home to a wherever. It's like, now imagine a 30,000 square foot furniture store and it has to be empty. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's a lot of work. But anyway, and then Cole, he lived up here in Sauk Rapids. And he was working for Target at the time. He was a young executive with Target. And so then, you know, Trevor and I were talking, and we were like, how can we expand our empire? And so we knew that Cole had always had a retail mindset, and we knew that we had plenty of holes that needed to be filled from an operations side. We were just kind of running and gunning, figuring it out as we went. I mean, not a ton of processes, which if I could go back and if I had advice to anybody who's doing anything, is start anything as if it's going to have 100 employees. Like, just take everything super seriously, because when you try to work backwards with a bunch of employees and everyone has their own habits and own way of doing things, and you don't have a set standard, it's very, very difficult to, you know, retroactively go back and fix everything. So that'd be one piece of advice. But yeah, so then Cole was living up here, and I could tell that he had interest in what we were doing, because he'd kind of come to the store in Maple Grove and see us, and he bought like a hot tub from us, and he just thought it was fun. And so then we were like, well, we could put a store up in St. Cloud if we could find a spot. So we originally were looking at the spot over by the Chuck E. Cheese. It's now a auto parts store. You know what I'm talking about?
If you're from St. Cloud, it was Circuit City forever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. I think it was a food place. There's the flooring store.
Yep.
And
just to the left, like the big one on the corner.
Yes, or maybe it was a Circuit City.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I trust me. I don't know. But
I mean, I'm talking 25 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So so then I was looking at that spot, and I was calling, I think it was Casey O'Malley, who was the broker on that deal, who was a Johnny.
Yep.
And so then I was talking with him, and we went and looked at it, and it was in pretty rough shape. And then he was like, you know, I think there's this other spot that might be a better fit for you. And then Sam Johnson, who's now Parcel, he was representing that building for a real estate group out of Fargo.
Cool.
I believe it was Fargo, North Dakota somewhere. Fargo or Grand Forks. Not relevant.
Sam helped us buy this.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been saying before.
Yeah, great guy. And so then I explained to Sam, hey, this is what we do. We do these short-term leases, possibly could turn into something, not really sure.
Yeah.
Pretty low ball offer on the rent, but it's just sitting there. We could fill it. And that's how we started.
That's cool.
And then after about 2 years, they were looking to get out, and they had like a 1031 exchange opportunity. They wanted to sell. We were in a pretty good position at the time, and it just kind of worked. So then we ended up purchasing the property, and I work with an awesome banker. He's a guy out of Marshall, worked with my family for years with Bremer. His name is Randy Serene, and he kind of helped me structure it in a way to, he's like, all right, we're going to roll in the improvements into the loan. So he's like, you're going to have brand new roof, brand new HVAC, new facade, new paint, new sign, and it's just all going to be one payment versus, which I'm super, super thankful that he like talked me into doing that and helped me out with it. Because it's like now it's just so nice not really having to worry about it. I mean, it's just like a cinder block building. It's like built like a bunker, but it's like 31,000 feet. There's so many options. You wouldn't believe it. The best prices, best service. I'm just kidding. But yeah, so that is sort of the quick timeline of how we ended up in St. Cloud.
And I mean, I think one of the things that I don't have mental recollection of your spot until you guys had the big renovation done. And how long were you guys there before the big reno happened and the fresh paint on the outside of the building?
It was about, I think, 2 years. About 2 years.
And I think I thought that it was a new business that went in. You got your big new logo, and it felt like, I mean, even until we went, until you hosted, I thought this is for sure a chain.
Yeah.
This is for sure some big national chain.
Yeah.
Look how polished that building is. The logo looks right. It just, it just felt like something that was not just a local guy who's, doing a cool thing with a friend, trying to make something of himself. I don't know. It was a fun little thing to learn showing up at your chamber.
I appreciate it. Yeah. A common response at chamber was like, this is what you two knuckleheads do?
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. But yeah, no, I always appreciate that. We're not a chain. We are certainly not a chain, but it is I take it as a very, very sincere compliment that people would think.
It feels polished and that.
So thank you.
Yeah, it's cool. So what's next for you guys? Do you have interest in being a chain? Do you have interest in growing?
To be honest, we have been kind of just burning the candle at both ends here for, I don't know, basically since I started. I mean, at one point we had 5 different locations running at the same time, and it's been
all of them rentals, or
yes, yep. This is the only location
that you've owned.
Yep, that we've owned, and we had stores in the cities, and we had stores in Otsego and Brainerd, and it's just a big part of it is it was a really, really weird time for us where we had hit a lot of doubles, triples, and home runs, and then the only thing that was stopping us was getting inventory during COVID. When the inventory shortage and everything happened, we were just kind of at a loss. I didn't exactly know what to do. Yeah. And I had never really gone through a normal business cycle or any sort of financial recession. You just don't know what the financial cycles are actually like. You just kind of take the word of the people that, most of the time are the people selling you the product, and they tell you, well, you got to buy, it's going to be 2-3 years lead time for a lot of this stuff. So you got to get your name on it now. We don't know when the supply chain is going to come back to normal. And, for us, we have to have so much product to open a new store.
For sure.
So we were in this weird stage where we had been done really well. We were primed and ready to grow and to do more, but we didn't have the assets to do it. And we didn't know when the faucet was going to turn back on or when it was going to shut back off. And so we just kept taking stuff and taking stuff and taking stuff and taking stuff because we just kept being told, well, this might be it. This might be it. This might be it.
And you're not buying this on consignment. You're putting cold hard cash.
Yes.
Against it.
Yes. You got 30 days, but it doesn't. Yeah. If you're not putting it right on the floor and turn it around, it doesn't really matter. So we're just accumulating a lot of product. So then eventually we got to the point where we had so much product, like we just had to open stores to try to get rid of the product. And then, probably grew faster than we should have. Had, again, this goes back to like the process thing where we weren't super buttoned up along the way, just because like when it was just me, I could kind of get away with, little things.
Yeah.
Like it's just a lot easier. And yeah, so I just think we just kind of bit off a little bit more than we could chew at the time. And it was just felt very chaotic. I mean, chaotic for my life. Like, had stores down in the cities and back in St. Cloud and Brainerd, and you're just driving all the time and just trying to make sure that everything's okay and make sure everyone shows up on time and make sure all the bills are paid and everything else. And it's just like, it got to the point where I was like, okay, like this is just like, I want less. Like I want to, let's slim down.
Yep.
And then so at the same time, my buddy Trevor, he was kind of running the stores in the cities. And then one of our leases got bought out that he was managing down there. And that was like our last store that we had currently operating at the time in the Twin Cities area. And he had just gotten married and his wife was not fond of the weekends. And it's a lot of time working retail. It just is. And so then he ended up stepping away. He got a new gig and, super thankful for him. And it's just like, we have a phenomenal relationship.
Yeah.
So then it was like pretty much the entire plan was just like, let's just focus on one thing and let's just do one thing really, really well. Let's kind of get back to the roots of what made this thing work in the first place. And that was, we invest in our community. We invest our time and effort and energy in the people and the customers that we have doing things the way that we do things. And just rather than trying to be, 60% on 5 things, let's just be 100% on one. And that's sort of when we started to join the chamber and do all of these other things. And it's just been great, to be honest. Like the store is up very significantly this year and we've grown every year we've been here. And
that's
it's
really
just
cool.
So I think as of right now, the plan is just to compound on the good thing we have going.
That's cool.
And then let's just let that ride for a while and then just see where things go from there. But so as of right now, no direct ambitions, always looking at, what other possible opportunities are out there. But as of now, I wouldn't say there's anything like I'm
imminent.
Yes, exactly. And I'm pretty more like I'm cooled on the idea of the international takeover of the furniture industry. So
there's some big players there.
There are some big players and one store is good.
Cool. And so you said this year, your sales or, business has been up. What do you think, what are some of the reasons that this year has been good?
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things. I think the way that we've done our marketing has helped us. We've been kind of leveraging Facebook a lot more, and that's helped us a lot. And we do it in a really efficient way. And we get a lot of people like communicating with us. So we're just communicating back and forth with them, with our customers directly. That's had a massive impact on us. I think too, the focus of effort, and we've also really just been dialing in like our product mix. It's just like when you have your attention just focused on the one thing, I feel like everything just gets a little bit better. And in terms of the business, it's like, I feel like any effort that you put in, it seems like you get back what you give.
Sure.
And that it's, the reciprocity of it, such as the chamber. It doesn't happen right away, but it's just that continual build. And it's like every little thing you do does matter. Yeah. And I think too, it's just, I talked about this all the time, like with our staff, it's like there is no such thing as a idle interaction with a customer. Anytime somebody comes into that door, you either give them energy or you take it from them. Same with the customer. The customer gives or takes energy. Like you can have, it's a weird thing. Like sometimes, people aren't the friendliest to retail staff and it just kind of drains you a little bit and you got to fight that to not allow that to happen. And so just kind of staying on that same mindset of just building and always focusing just on these little things. And I think that's had a really big impact on us. And the other thing too is just the compound of time. As we were talking a little bit before this, furniture has a long life cycle.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're entering about our 5th year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like about every 5 years, you know, somebody's replacing a sofa or a mattress or something. And it just takes that 5-year timeline. So like, you know, a store that's been around for 20 years, well, they got 4 time cycles, 4 generations of buyers that are just going to keep coming back and back and back. And I think that also has a very big impact on, you know, the increase in sales.
It's just so fun to hear. When I talk about Chamber, and you know, when people say like, oh, should I join Chamber? You know, the motto for Chamber is that Chamber works.
Chamber works.
And the thing I always tell people though is like, it doesn't work if you don't work it.
Yeah.
And so like, if you think that you're just going to join Chamber and your name is going to be on some list somewhere and like somehow that's going to like drive business for you, it's silly. But if you're willing to put your body where the other bodies go, and you're willing to like jump in and help, and the relationships that get developed in that, those are the things that you can eventually kind of that have impact on your business. Whether maybe you grow sales, maybe you grow skill set, just knowing a community, understanding a community, all of that stuff. All of that happens inside of the Chamber, as long as you're willing to like actually show up and kind of like do the work with it.
Well, and too, you know, even going today, it's like, I was just thinking about the first time that I went and how different it feels now. And it's like the first time you go and you're like, oh gosh, I don't know. We got to get up early, and it's kind of, you know, it's just uncomfortable. Yeah. But that's
everything
the
new.
That's the point.
Yeah.
If it's uncomfortable, do it. Sign yourself up for it. So you have to do it. So you can't give yourself the out to not do it. But then it's eventually like, you get better at public speaking. You have to meet people. You have to talk to people. You have to be able to, like for me too, you know, it's even just to be able to explain your business in 10 seconds. Go. In front of everybody. And takes you a little bit to get used to it. And then too, you got to think on your feet a little bit. And it's just like, all of those little things help you be a better communicator, and you have a willing and honest and yearning audience that wants to help you. And it's like, I think that's part of like the work with Chamber, is they want it to work for you.
It is a warm audience. You're rooting for each other because you're trying to do the same thing. Like,
absolutely.
I'm here because I'm trying to grow something. I got a wife, I got kids. Like I'm trying to grow this thing.
Yeah.
And so like again, game, respect, game, you know, it's this hustle thing. Everyone here, they're trying to do that same thing.
Absolutely.
And so when someone stands up on the mic, you're kind of rooting for them. Like you want them to do well.
You don't want them to fail.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
That's cool.
So like you said, it sounds super cliche, but Chamber works if you work it.
There's an old adage, cobblers' kids have holes in their shoes.
Okay.
You know, I get asked all the time, just being a photographer, like, do you take family photos all the time of your own family? And I mean, I do some, and I should do a lot more, you know, but I touch a camera all the time. And so I often don't think about it in my personal life of like, oh, I should pick up a camera. I do sometimes. Do you have all of the nicest and best furniture? I didn't think so.
No, I have. It's so funny. Pretty much anytime something comes that's like either a bad buy or damaged or broken, it's like, that's going to end up.
It's at my house.
That's at my house. Like right now in my basement. So we got this couch off a liquidation truck, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like a modular sectional. And then we actually had this one random piece from a different one from a long time ago that we've had forever, and it's just sitting in the box. So, but it was the match to this piece that we had. And I was like, well, if I could just take this, I can then get rid of this new one and use this as my couch.
Yeah.
But the headrest on the new one doesn't work, so it's always forward. So it's this leather like reclining sectional that doesn't have an arm. So I just put a nightstand in front of it, and that's my basement couch.
And your bed is a giant king size race car.
Yes, yes.
Race car bed.
Well, it's IndyCar. IndyCar. It's a little cooler than that. But yes, that's super funny that you bring that up. But that is absolutely true. You know, if something gets returned, like my mattress was a return. It's either going to sit there or I can find a use for it. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah. Well, Ben, it's fun to hear your story again.
Yeah.
I wish you guys all, just the best of luck. Keep working hard. Clearly, you guys are really, really, really hard workers. And hearing your story was incredible. And just seeing how you took a building that needed a lot of work and you have put that work into it. And that I'm I'm thankful for St. Cloud, you know, like, or
Yeah.
I'm happy that you guys have put in that work, you've put in that effort, and that our people have shown up in a really neat way to
Yeah.
embrace you in this community. And it'll be fun to watch. You know, I like your idea of like really going deep with this one.
Yeah.
But inevitably, I'm excited to see what you guys end up doing.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I think people that work hard like you, there's neat things coming. And
For sure.
yeah.
And nothing ever happens as fast as you want it to.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a big lesson that I've learned. You know, I'm 31, so it's like I still got a lot of time.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, as far as the story goes, it's like, well, like rather than trying to just like catch everything right now,
Yeah.
it's like, let's just make sure we do it right so we don't have to go back and redo things later.
Yeah.
And yeah, it takes, you know, hindsight's 2020, obviously. And it's and I'm super thankful for doing it the way that we've done it, because it's like the amount of that I learned, you know, throughout the process. And it's just like I could tell you, you know, everywhere I go, I'm eyeing up furniture.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I can probably have a pretty good idea where you got that, or where you got this, or how much you paid for that. And just because I've, you know, during COVID especially, we had to try to find any brand that we could get product from. So it's like just seeing a lot, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities for us as well, using different catalogs and whatnot. So if you need anything, no matter how crazy, come ask us. If I don't have it there, I bet I can find it. So that's what we do, is we try to we'll do anything we can to take care of you. We'll get you the best price possible, and you're going to get 5-star service. So
wonderful. Well, Ben, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We close out all of our podcasts with an unpaid ad.
Yeah.
This is just you telling us what someone, something, some group that you think deserves a little plug.
Yeah. So I was kind of thinking about it after you asked, and the first one that came to my head was Solid Rock Family Church. So Pastor Ryan Conrad, he's at Chamber all the time. He's the G is for God.
Yeah.
And he too, I mean, really cool story. So he started in doing church at movie theaters in White Park, and he's kind of built it up. And he, every single time, like I was raised Catholic, you know, K through 8 Catholic school back in Marshall, went to St. John's. I've experienced a lot of church, been to a lot of churches, and the way that Ryan is able to weave life, like real situations, and like the Word of God, or however you want to say it, you just actually feel, every time I leave, I feel better than I did when I went in. And it's just like the little life lessons that he gives, and he gives a lot of, you know, applicable, actionable items that you can enact in your life. And I just have a ton of respect for him and the way that he carries himself. You know, he's very open that things aren't perfect in his life. I mean, he's struggling just as much as anybody, and he's honest and he's real. And like one thing that he did was, this was maybe a year ago, like last Christmas, he talked about, like, everybody knows, you know, Gabriel comes down to Mary. He's like, you know, you're going to carry the Son of God, yada, yada, yada. Everyone knows Jesus' perspective. Everyone knows the wise men. Everyone knows Mary. I've never once heard somebody talk about Joseph and be like, you're Joseph, and now is this your child? Kind of. But like, you're not married, and you got to step up and be, you know, because back at that time, that was not very well accepted. And he was steadfast, and he stood strong in his faith and trusted in the process. And it's just like, I've never heard throughout my entire life somebody give the perspective of Joseph. And I just thought that was interesting. So if you're looking for a fun atmosphere with life applicable lessons and just a very warm, welcoming place, I definitely recommend checking out, you know, Solid Rock Family Church with Pastor Ryan Conrad. So
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Ben, I'm thankful. Seriously, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you.
Fun to hear a little bit of your origin story. And everyone, you should, if you need a couch or a bed or a nightstand or something, you should go see Ben and the crew
please
over at
do.
Dream Home.
Yeah, and thank you guys. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
You're creating more knowledge that will lead to more appreciation of this town.
That's cool.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.